Hello, welcome back to the channel. Well, you've seen this typewriter. This is my IBM Selectric 721, the Blue Beast, maybe could be called that. I've made two other videos recently about this typewriter. They were about the topic of the original chassis in this typewriter was a 12 pitch or 12 character per inch chassis. And in one of my videos, which I'll put a link down below, I was talking about the problems I was having with 12 pitch type in the Selectric 721 that has a cloth ribbon cartridge, and how I thought the quality of the imprint from a cloth ribbon at 12 pitch was a little bit less than what I was hoping for. So I talked about swapping the chassis between that 12 pitch chassis and another 10 pitch Selectric 721 chassis that I had access to through my friend Kevin. And I did the swap and then started testing it and discovered that, well, that chassis, the new 10-pitch chassis, needed some work. And so I called up my friend Steve Marshall, who is an ex-IBM field service engineer and still does repairs and still has OEM parts for many of the typewriters. I inquired as to whether he would be willing to look at this and fix the issues in this new 10-pitch chassis. Let's talk about the work he did and how it performs. Stay tuned. Well, here's the top view of the keyboard, and I want to point out that when we replaced the 12-pitch chassis with the 10-pitch, the keycaps, of course, came with it. The 12-pitch chassis was almost black keys, and this is a lighter gray, and I really do like the way the lighter gray keys work aesthetically with the blue body of the typewriter. I really like the look of that. So another difference was the 12-pitch chassis had the express backspace feature installed by Steve Marshall. I didn't want the express backspace, however, so I have the original large rectangular return key, which I really like the size and the position of. It's very handy. And of course, the EXP key would have been right here if it had been installed, and the return key would be kind of L-shaped instead. This is the original. Okay, so another big change here is the line spacing selector. This is what I wanted. So the original line spacing selector would have two positions, single spaced and double spaced. But this has a third intermediate position for 1.5 line spacing. And in order to do that, Steve had to replace the line spacing ratchet or cog with one with finer teeth, and this switch mechanism also had to be swapped out. Steve also replaced the paper bale rollers and all the feed rollers, and that's nice having new feed rollers. Now, with these Selectrics, there is this copy set feature over on the left side. It's really preferable to type with it at the lowest setting unless you really are doing carbon copies. And also, this generation of Selectric has this red little lever next to the type element, and this is the impression control. You can kind of make micro adjustments to it. I usually leave it in 2 or 3. It seems to work pretty good in that mode as well. Here's another thing I really like about the Selectrics, and it kind of reminds me of some of the large Underwood standards, is I like the paper scale on the eraser table. It has a center mark, the 0 mark, and then it has equal divisions in inches as you go out toward the outside. So this enables you to easily center up any kind of paper. Any kind of oddball size, intermediate size, you just basically center it so it's reading the same on both sides, and then you know it's in the middle. And why do you want to know that it's in the middle? Well, first of all, it's going to feed better because you're centered on the feed rollers. You don't have like more rollers on one side of the paper than the other, so it'll feed better. But also, this will help you if you want to center any titles or headings. Being able to put your print carrier, print position at the center position, and then you can center the type much easier. So this is one of the assemblies that Steve replaced. This is for the backspace issue. It had an issue where it would make kind of a grinding noise, and when it hit the left margin, it would kind of grind instead of just sitting there cycling. And it turned out to be there is this real subtle play you can see as I pull it in and out. That play was the cause of that problem. And this particular kind of an issue If I had tried to troubleshoot it myself, I probably never would have found the problem, because I wouldn't have known that this slight amount of play is important to the proper, or not having this kind of play is important to the proper operation of the unit. And yeah, so this is another advantage of having an expert with decades of factory trained experience working on it for you. So these were the parts that were replaced to convert it from single line spacing to 1.5 line spacing. So this is a 27 tooth sprocket. That's for the single line spacing only. Steve put in the 54 tooth sprocket and changed the lever assembly as well to give it that 1.5 line feature. So he had the OEM parts in stock for this conversion, which is really cool. Steve also replaced the paper bale rollers. Those are the old ones. And he replaced the feed rollers, both sets of feed rollers. So it's nice having fresh rubber rollers and the paper feeds nice and straight. So I did the initial swapping of the chassis when this was converted from 12 to 10 pitch, but I didn't have the right kind of rubber cement for the 10 pitch scale. So Steve also cemented the scale properly in place like it should have been. And if you saw that last video about the Selectric, I had to use a very thin razor knife and slowly make passes behind this very thin and fragile aluminum scale in order to free it from the original glue that was in place. But here it is, all nice and converted to 10 pitch. Well, there are a few lessons, I think, that I can draw from this whole experience. Number one, I do like blue typewriters. Number two, I really like the original model of Selectric, the so-called Selectric 1, the 7.2 series or 7X series. And one of the reasons is I especially like the cloth ribbon system, because going forward in the next years and decades, I can reload these cartridges with cloth ribbon, and from the way things look right now, we'll still have cloth typewriter ribbons into the future. And you can reload these cartridges. They come apart pretty easy. So that makes this typewriter functional into the future, unlike one of the single-use only film type ribbons like Selectric 2s and 3s that if you run out of those, if they quit making them or whatever, it's going to be a lot harder to keep using those machines. So I like that. Well, what price do you pay for having this longevity, let's call it? Well, first of all, these don't have liftoff correction, unlike the Selectric 2s and 3s. So you have to live with the idea that you're going to be either living with typographical errors or correcting using traditional typewriter correction methods. But I do like typing on the Selectric, though. It is a wonderful, fast machine, and one of the things I especially like is not only being able to see where my margins are, where the margin settings are currently at, just by looking, but you have the current position of the print carrier. That little red indicator moves as you type. And as a consequence, you can easily tell how close you're coming to the right margin, which is really cool. Having interchangeable type elements, of course, is neat, although daisy wheel typewriters do have that too. But the Selectric has the advantage that the quick response between pressing a key and hearing the letter being printed is quite a bit quicker than most or all daisy wheel typewriters. So another lesson about this is, okay, I could have spent months learning how to service the Selectric and come to the point where I may not have had the knowledge to know what parts needed to be replaced for instance, that backspace issue. Because you can learn things on your own, but what you won't necessarily learn is the decades of experience that a seasoned veteran factory-trained technician like Steve Marshall might have. And also, he has a supply of parts, OEM parts, I don't have. So all that to say that the cost for me financially for getting this professionally serviced, I think, is well worth it, because he was able to do things that I simply didn't have access to parts-wise. It's great having a professionally serviced typewriter like this, and going in the future also, talking about longevity, we're all getting older. There may not be living field service engineers factory trained by IBM going forward decades into the future. We don't really know that. Nor will we have necessarily access to factory parts, right? So I wanted to have that done for that reason. There you go, Selectric 721, now in 10-pitch. I enjoy using the 10-pitch type elements. They do look neater and cleaner when I type with them. And also, if I choose to use 12-pitch elements, the letters aren't going to be crowded together like using 10-pitch elements on a 12-pitch chassis. I can still use those 12-pitch type elements if I choose to. In the meantime, I'm going to get plenty of good use out of it, and I have a whole stack of letters that needs to be written to reply to people, so I'm going to be doing that, enjoying this, and I wish you a lot of enjoyment in your creative ventures with your typewriters and playing with words, being creative, and as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.